Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Skylar Sullivan. Skylar started woodworking when he was 4 years old. His education and passion for woodwork taught by his mom. He never really pursued woodworking until college when he started making small things for around the house. Once this happened, his passion grew, thus his purpose to create amazing, heartfelt products, and this has been with him ever since. Skylar grew up in a military family and was always told to stick to his guns and follow the path of a means to an end. He found through, though, like most things in life, the end is never explained. Skylar's journey started while working night shifts, and he ended up making a fantastic pen. Just before he went to work, he posted a picture of it on his Facebook. A friend reached out and exclaimed he really needed to start selling these pens. This was a catalyst, and from there, Skylar's passion exploded. His next step, he launched an Etsy site, which allows consumers to buy directly from someone who put their heart and soul into making something special. The site is unique as one searches to find things they love, and once they find it, they directly support the independent seller. This allowed him last year to really take his carpentry to the next level. Skylar realized that life is not just about living and finding the end. It is about making life more memorable, not just for you or me, but for generations. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Skylar. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Fantastic. So, Skylar, I'm a huge Marvel nerd, Star Wars nerd. I like that sort of stuff. And the reason I bring that up is my first question to you is about your origin story. And one of the things that has irritated me most of my life is that Marvel and Star Wars and so many people start at the middle when really the beginning is your origin. They start with a story, they have no background to it. Maybe they do in the books, but not necessarily do they have it in the movies. And then once it's become successful, then they decide to do movies about the origin and telling you how everything got to be where it's at. I personally think that everything in life starts with the origin, and that's the first thing that people want to hear about, that really care about exactly what it is that you stand for and represent. So, Skylar, tell me your origin story and what key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you are at currently.
That's actually a great question. I wanted to say that right off the bat. All my life, my mom, cause my dad was overseas a lot, or it seemed like he was never home. So my mom was really my biggest encouragement, and she had always wanted to, frame an piece of artwork I had done, or make sure to celebrate all those little things in life, those things that make you, they make you smile in the moment because you're proud of your achievement, right? It doesn't matter if it's good or bad, it's something you did. And I guess that's kind of where living life more memorably comes from, because all throughout my life, it's every time I've done something that I'm particularly proud of, or something that means that much more to me, like high school. That was when I started to do little things, like real little things of woodworking. I built a cat tree. just, you know, little homey things. They weren't good at all. They were bad. Like PVC pipe and a towel wrapped around it, and like sew up the towel, and it makes a hammock, and it's cool. But I think of all those things, stuff like that. It's the slowly building of pride and enjoyment in my own work. That really, I feel like that's my origin.
Well, that's good. Did you know? So your mom was into wanting to frame your art, and like you said, your dad was overseas a lot. What exactly do you remember from your childhood in regards to, you know, woodworking with your mom? Do you have many memories from when you were that age?
Yes,
I know it's difficult, but
I mean, you get like vague recollections. One of the best memories, though, is the first thing we ever built together. And this was so long ago. We lived at Fort Knox off of Pearson Lane in the Pearson subdivision on Fort Knox. And we had taken just like little balsa wood cuts, you know, all those little prepackaged, like this is a wheel thing, and this is like a this, you know, like a trapezoid and all those. And we had taken those and just kind of nailed them all together. And we made, you know, like toy trains and a caboose. And I still have it somewhere. And that was the first thing we ever did together.
what an amazing memory. Does your mom, is she still involved somewhat? Does she come and watch you? Do you still communicate in regards to projects? Is she still involved at all?
I live at home with my parents to, you know, I help support them and take care of them. And, she's still doing stuff in the shop all the time. Like, I'll make a really, really great pen, or I'll make something really cool, and then it's almost a competition. She'll be like, okay, you think that pen's great, but look what I'm about to do. And she'll, you know, come up with something immediately, and then it's, you know, the continual process of one-upping each other.
That's a great, like, I can see the smile on your face. For those of you listening, Skylar's got a big smile on his face. It's so warm and inviting. It's just amazing. For you, those of you watching this on YouTube, you can see what I'm talking about. That connection and that unity of I love that you both have that joy. Your mom sparked it in you, and it's still there today. Who taught your mom? How did she learn woodworking?
I know she took shop classes in high school in Grafton, Wisconsin. It was around the time she was junior year, because I've heard this story plenty of times. There was someone in her class whose car broke down after cheerleading practice, and she was flagging down someone to help because she didn't know anything about cars. And she was taken advantage of and murdered on the scene. And there was an implementation in the school that all boys had to take cooking classes and sewing and home ec, and all girls also had to take, you know, shop classes and auto mechanic classes. But she also kind of grew up on a farm, so she learned the rudimentary, the essential skills from her father.
Oh, okay. So, you know, you talk about the fact that, you know, in school she had to learn. Well, my generation going to school, when I went to high school, we had to do all the same. We had to take what they call food sciences. We had to take sewing classes. We had to take shop class where we're working on lathes, both wood and steel, working on, you know, engines, like small engines. We had to find projects. And I remember my dad getting me this old 5 horsepower rototiller motor that needed to get worked on, and having to break it down and hone out the cylinder and put a new piston and rings and all that sort of things. And the reason I mentioned that was the unity thing between my dad and I, because we talked about it. We had to go to the local place where they sold Briggs and Stratton parts and pick up the parts. And And then when I got it all up and running, we brought it back to my dad's shop because my dad was a farm equipment dealer, had a heavy duty shop in the back, got it running. And he says, what do you want to do with it? I said, well, do we need it for anything? He had already replaced the motor. It was, on the rototiller, and it was just, he had never thought about getting it fixed, but it ended up being a project for me. And we sold it. He says, we could sell it. And we sold it to my uncle for his rototiller, and I believe I got $80 for it. The parts were like $35 or $40, and I was up like $40, somewhere around there. That was a long time ago, right? This was back in the early 80s. And that unity and that connection that we can have between our parents doesn't necessarily mean you have to do the thing together, but just a shared interest. And with you, it's one step farther. Your mom and you had the shared interest, and then you actually do it together. That, to me, that is just blows my mind. That's exciting. So what it would be the neatest project, right? Yeah, I always love hearing people's stories and their adventures as they're, on their entrepreneurial journey. Can you tell me a story about the wildest thing you have ever created for somebody?
Wildest thing I've ever created for someone.
Or it doesn't even have to be wild. It can just be something that was sentimental, or it give you the feels, or whatever the case may be. Just what's the most intriguing, interesting thing, wildest thing you've ever created? It doesn't even have to be in this last year, just in your lifetime. And I love the way you spin stories. So if longer the better. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I just love I love your stories, right? And the listeners, as a side note, before Skylar starts telling us a story, you need to start following him. We'll talk about how you can reach him at the end of this episode, but you need to start following Skylar and listening to him and seeing his passion and love for woodworking, and the passion of the stories that go along with it is just amazing. So sorry for that as a side note, giving you a plug. So yeah, please tell me a story about something that you've created.
Probably the greatest story, in my opinion, is I made this little pen. I mean, it's on my Etsy, so like, I'll throw that out there right now. It wasn't for anyone in particular, but I got this white oak, and a lot of it came from Paducah Downs, our bluegrass downs in Kentucky, where they do the Kentucky Derby. This place is where they train the horses for the Kentucky Derby, like where they run their laps and make sure they get checkups and all that. Well, they had recently, within the last couple of years, redone a fence and part of a barn. And my hardwood dealer said, hey, I can get my hands on some of this old white oak. Do you want some? And I was like, I absolutely do. And when I finally got my hands on it, I saw there were initials carved into it, HCW, on like every one of these boards. And I asked him, I was like, hey, what is HCW? He's like, I don't know. So I called up, the racetrack, and I was like, hey, I got some of these boards. They're super great. I love, how they held up over time, because white oak is a real strong wood, but it has all that character. It was kind of worm-eaten from age and stuff. And I was like, this is superb. I called him up and I said, hey, what is HCW? And he goes, oh, that's probably Old Harry. And I was like, oh, Old Harry. And I said, yeah, he always carved his and his wife's initials on like weird stuff that he had done, because he helped out. He was a handyman and a farmer all over the area. And anytime he'd do something, if he could sneak it in, he would. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I need to see if I can meet this man, like call him up and talk to him, because like this is, I'm gonna do something kind of neat with it. And well, I reached out and I tried to get in contact with him. He's long passed, and his wife is long passed as well. I managed to get in contact with his granddaughter, and she goes, "Oh yeah, Grandpa always did that, and like he just loved her," and she went on and on. about how wonderful like that relationship was. And I was like, this is fantastic. And as I was looking at the wood, and because it had all those voids and wormholes and stuff, I was like, I have to fill this with resin and make a pen out of it. And I was like, that love pink that's the color. I was like, I got to use that color. So I poured it in there. And the entire time I was just thinking about this man, like going across town, helping people put up cabinets, put up fences, working with the horses for the Kentucky Derby. Like even the Queen from England comes over every year, to watch that event. And, it's England, they hate us. But I was thinking of all of these things as it was coming together, and I was like, oh man, what kind of pen? And I managed to put a laser pointer in this pen. Because even when, love is hard and love can have challenges, but if you work on it and approach all things with love and communication, it points you in the right direction.
Wow.
And yeah, that pen's for Harry.
Wow. That just, oh my gosh. I don't know about the people that are listening, but that gives me the feels, right? Because number one, he carved his and his wife's initials and things that he worked on, then reaching out and finding his granddaughter. And then, you just putting that together and with the laser pointer and the connection between the color and the ability of a laser pointer to point toward that love and that compassion they had for one another is just, that blows my mind. That's just awesome. Next thing is there anything else before I go on to the next thing? Do you have any other stories that you would like to share in regards to products that whether it was for sale on Etsy or it was for one of your clients or just for your family, like even the thing that you're creating right now that you're looking at, instead of having particle board bookshelf, you're looking at making something right now, like anything you want to share. I just love the way you have that.
I'm making I'm super excited for the bookshelf.
Me too. I love the colors look amazing. So those listening don't have a clue what we're talking about, but anything that you want to share, because you have a magical touch when it comes to connection, to the soul and heart from an inanimate object. It just blows my mind. So anything you want to share, that's great. If not, we'll just continue on.
I'll tell you guys a little bit about the bookshelf.
Sure. Tell them about it. Yes.
I'm so excited for it. So
start at the beginning why you got there though.
Okay. Well, pretty much all my life we've had like these Walmart particle press, old Kmart, whatever, they're not around anymore, but these particle press bookshelves, which are fine. They're like $20 and they can last a long time if you take care of them. But there reaches a point where like the effort to take care of them is more than the value that they have. And I have two of them in my room. I've got kind of this weird decorative lip. It's about 30 inches tall. So the bookshelves stick up above it, and it's like weird towers. And I'm like, I'm just not excited for this. But I have these bookshelves, and they're so narrow, and like the shelves are weirdly placed, and they're falling apart. And I was just looking at them, and I was like, man, I love to read. Like I read all the time. But these bookshelves, they like impact me mentally. It's like almost depressing that like I'm keeping my hard-earned books, all my old textbooks, stuff like that, on these bookshelves, and they're barely standing. Like if I shut the door too hard in one direction, I think my bedroom might collapse. And there's a new hardware place about 10 minutes down the road, and they put out a post on Facebook, and they were like, hey, we have walnut really cheap because it's all bad. Like we tried to skip plane it. It's really, really thin. They do mostly like dimensional lumber, or not dimensional, like slab-like lumber. So you can, cut it down and resaw it and book match it. But these boards of walnut ended up really, really thin. I was like, okay, I'll take a look at it. I saw one piece, and he goes, yeah, that piece is 8 feet long. I was like, oh man. So is that back wall in my room. And I was like, oh man, I've got the connection right here. I was like, I'm going to make a bookshelf, and it's going to have a resin river through it. And one of my favorite books, or most impactful books, was The Last Unicorn by Robert S. Beasley. And it's an interesting fantasy kind of love story in a way. There's a lot to it that I won't go into because we'll be here forever. But it starts off with the unicorn lives in the lilac woods. And it's spring all the time. And as I saw this walnut, and I was like, okay, this is the bookshelf. It's really close to the grain, or not the grain, the bark. So the grain has these blues and soft whites and almost purples running through it. Now, I've worked with lilac wood, but never a slab. And when I saw the resin, I was like, I can throw lilacs and purples and kind of beautiful spring colors in there. And I was like, it's almost a Last Unicorn bookshelf. Like one of those most impactful things in my life. I was like, and it just kind of, it's a great book, and it kind of pulls it all together.
That's awesome. So, you know, not a lot of people, and I know people that do woodworking, but you're the most unique person I have ever had the pleasure of meeting when it comes to taking woodworking, carpentry, and adding a story and value and connecting it. Like you're a magical connector, right? When it comes to it. And now every time when you're done this and you have that bookshelf up, you're going to walk in, you're going to see it, you're going to see the purples. And I watched you working on it. I've seen the video and how you did the resin and you did the swirl, like the river swirl. It looks just amazing. For those listening, I can't even begin to explain it to you. Go check out Follow My Buddy, and you'll see his videos where he actually shows working on the products. But now every time you see it, you're going to think of that last unicorn, and it's going to bring back all those memories, a rush in. And that's so heartfelt. That's just awesome. I think that's just amazing. I wish more people were like you. And I know maybe not enough people tell you, but I think, you know, there's a lot of people. We both belong in a group called the 365 Driven Society. And you've made pens, and we've been following you for a long time. A lot of us since about March, and we all totally believe in you and what you can accomplish. And I hope that it's starting to creep in, and that you're starting to embrace the fact of how talented you are in regards to that connection between the inanimate piece of wood and the story. So the next thing I'm going to talk to you about is that I've watched your videos many times throughout this past year. You show creation to finish, which is fantastic to watch the painstaking process and care you put into your creations. The thing I enjoy the most is the stories you interject to bring your creation alive. They are never scripted, yet flow so well and are so heartfelt. Can you tell me, how did this passion for storytelling come about? And when did you realize it was a powerful tool to add meaning to the inanimate object you were creating?
Well, I've always told stories. Like me and my little brother, we used to have bunk beds. And in the summers, we'd stay up, and I would just tell random stories. And it would be like, what if our life was, you know, Pokemon or Dragon Ball Z or Spider-Man or, you know, Star Wars. And it wouldn't be like we took over the main character and just retold the story. It would be something completely unique, but like inside that universe. And when I started to like shoot the videos of me, you know, working on projects or finishing them up or putting them together, I kind of realized, hey, this reminds me of this. Or like, I really feel strongly like that these two are connected. And it just became an outlet for me to be like, hey, you know, I love this pen. This is why. And it just kind of evolved from there.
So it all started with your brother and bunk beds. That's amazing. I was so looking forward to asking you this question. I know it kind of sounds weird, but I put a lot of prep time into what I want to communicate and how the flow I'd like to see it go. Sometimes it goes completely where I didn't think it would, which is a good thing. I've never had a bad podcast yet, but I was really, when I typed that question out, I thought, I can't wait till he answers this, because I really want to get to know you more. And I know my listeners, they're getting a start where I started at a different part of your origin. Really not knowing you, I started right in the middle, more not really at the beginning of your origin. Now I'm learning so much more, and my listeners and people that potentially will watch this are blessed. They get to start and hear you're starting. So now when they do go to check you out on Facebook, or go check out you on Etsy, which I highly suggest they do, that connection's there. This is amazing. I see this podcast as being a calling card for my buddy and helping him, as a stepping stone into your passion and desire of what you want to do for people. So thank you for that answer. That was really good. So, yeah. So one of the things, do you have any specific stories about items you've made for others and how it has changed their life? Have people ever reached out to you? And I know some people in our group have, raving reviews of the pens and things that you've created for them. Do you have any specific stories where people have reached out to you and said, this was amazing, this is how it affected me, this is how it touched me? Or have you had people say, can you create this? And this is why it connects to our family. Is there anything that you can share in regards to a meaningful connection in regards to a product that you created?
I actually have, when you asked this question, it made me think of a friend of mine. This is a wonderful story I love, actually. She wanted a Mother's Day gift, something really special for her mom. And, she's got a couple kids of her own, and she's been through, like, some tough times. So she finally finished up her divorce, like, just last week. But she wanted something really, really heartfelt for her mom. And that was kind of all she told me. That, and her mom really likes turquoise. And I was like, I got you. And I made this tulip wood pen with a turquoise Celtic knot. And I remember doing the video talking about how it was, really big into her family, how, like, her yellow, what she called the yellow house, but it was her father's house that he built. It had fallen down recently in those storms and fires and stuff in Colorado, and how she was trying to leave a legacy through her family because everyone in her family had a rights. And, I had put the Celtic knot in there and the gunmetal finish on the the stylus and stuff like that. And when she saw the video, she was blown away, and she immediately called me afterwards crying about how amazing it was, like how I just kind of pulled out things that she was tentative to say to me, or even some things that she didn't say, but like I somehow almost knew, as this pen. And when I heard that and heard how she was so excited to have something that was going to be able to be passed on in her family for generations and create like a legacy of letters and memories, just all those little things, I immediately made another pen exactly like it, which I never do, and sent that one to her, and then the other one to her mom. So that way it was, that continued legacy of her family. Because now when her mother passes away, hopefully not for a very long time, and that pen gets passed on, it might go to her sister, it might go to someone else, but now she has something too to pass on to her daughters to help continue that legacy. She writes amazing, like it's spectacular. And I wanted her to have something special. Celtic knot is like a unifying family. It symbolizes everything coming together. So I was like, you have to have something too. And when she got it, she called me up again crying. And just about how amazing it was. Like, every time I think about it, I'm a little teary-eyed, because like, to hear someone have so much passion for what I've done is heartwarming.
Yeah, it is. It's more than just a creation of an inanimate object like a pen. There's like you, I can hear the passion and listen to you talk about the fact of the Celtic knot and just, the connection of you thinking, you know what, I want to do two of these. So there's a continued legacy from mom to daughter, and that can be passed down. The daughter can pass to her family. And it like, wow, it's just, it gives me like the feels. I guess it's the only word I can think of using. It's very emotional, and I think that's fantastic. And you were so gifted, and I love the legacy. That's what I know. Obviously I can't do it at the same level as you, but I teach and educate people. What do you want for your life? What legacy do you want to leave behind? And most people don't think about it, but you have, and you're implementing it through your passion. You have the purpose of helping others through your skills, and then your compassion and your storytelling and your connection between the inanimate to the heart is just fantastic. So thanks for sharing that. Growing up in a military family, do you think that sparked any of the passion and drive you have for your storytelling? If not, what exactly gave you this passion to tell stories besides what you said about the bunk beds? Like, what made you decide that storytelling was what you were good at?
I'm still not even sure I'm good at it, but I enjoy
I
it.
think you are.
So
I
that's
think you are.
half the battle. um, I mean, I never really had a whole lot of friends because we moved around a lot in the military. So a lot of my life was spent in books or teaching myself to read with cookbooks or spending time with them. And when you spend a lot of time with people, you hear some of their best stories. What makes them happy. And I guess it evolved from that because I told you the story your mom told us about how or why she had to learn carpentry. And she has a whole ton of stories of things that just made her smile over the course of her life. And I think we all have stories. And I want us all to be able to share those. Whether it's, hey, this is my pen, I love it, and this is why. Or this is, my cutting board. It's got great grandma's handwritten recipe on it in Polish. I don't know what it says, but it's there. She used to make all the time. It's those little things because we all have stories. You told me a little bit about your dad once the other day, and I was like, oh, I immediately know like what cutting board I have to make for you. Like it's gonna have like a brick laid pattern and grooves just down the side. Because I can tell that your family growing up that was really what was important to your parents was your family.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And like it's what's
Absolutely.
important to you too. So like what makes a family? A home, right? Because if you're all together, that's what makes a house a home. And a nice brick house is just that classic little heartfelt story that we all kind of think of.
That's awesome. Yeah. I know their 60th coming up for the listeners. My sisters and myself are going to get Skylar starting in the new year. Their 60th isn't until July, so there's still time where it's not, again, with the pandemic, people aren't necessarily focusing on this sort of stuff, but I want to get a cutting board done, obviously. I like the idea you're talking about. There might be some of that where you're talking about the recipe and stuff that my sisters have mentioned when I talk to them about that. There'll be definitely some creative thought process, and I like the idea of what you're talking about. And then I want to get, one, if not two pens made, one unique for each of them. And Skylar does that stuff. You need to understand, and it'll be a creative process that will create something that can be a legacy that's passed down. And it's worth your time to get things that are unique. Anybody can go to a store and buy a cross pen or a Mont Blanc or whatever the case may be. They spend these $300-400 on these pens, but it's just an inanimate object. It doesn't tie to anything. When you give it to somebody, it's just, here's a pen. Thank you very much. There's no connection. There's no, thought process. And Skylar telling you he's already thought about, a design and stuff. You'll never get that going into a pen store and buying a pen. I don't care what it has on it. I don't care who's manufactured it. There's no story that's tied to it. So when we give this product to my parents, hopefully they don't listen to this episode, but if they do, they do. It's going to be so much more heartfelt and unique. And I'm going to be able to have Skylar's story and then add my own story of how I got to know Skylar and how this all evolved and came about. So thank you so much for that. That's fantastic. So Skylar, have you had many critics on your journey to be your own entrepreneur? And if so, how did you deal with them, or how are you dealing with them? Because you might still have them right now.
My family's always been a critic, because they're always, stick to the path, and then means to an end. And, you should go to graduate school, which I did for a little bit. I need like that in-person environment though, and this whole kind of lockdown thing stop that. But there's always people who say, "Oh, this much for a pen," or "You want to charge more than $5 because that's what I could get a package of those little Bic pens."
Yeah.
Like, I have my free Super 8 pen I stole from the motel. It's like, does it write? Like, no, it doesn't. It just had a piece of plastic.
Yeah.
But everyone always scoffs at the cost. They'll just scoff at the product. "Oh, I can do this myself." It's like, please do. Tell me how long it takes. Like, I want to know if I'm taking too long or if I'm doing it too quick. Do you have a table? No, I don't.
I think your prices are very fair. For those listening, that's nothing. When you start watching Skylar's videos and the amount of care and compassion and the intricate detail, really, it's priceless. So what he's charging to make these creations, and as another plug for my buddy, he's gotten into being able to make rings too. And I won't say how I know that because, no spoiler alerts, but it is an amazing thing that Skylar's learned to do. And he's willing to step out on faith, take some risk, and learn how to do things. And it all started with a little 4-year-old boy and his mom having taken shop classes, thinking, let's teach my son teach my son something that's really unique. And maybe she didn't think of it as a bonding experience back then, but it is. Even the competitive nature, like you said, if you make a pen, she's going to make something better or whatever. That just makes me smile. It makes me feel glad. That's family, right? Even if there's a competitive edge, at the end of the day, even if your mom did outperform you, you're just as proud and happy for her as she is proud and happy of you for what you accomplish and do with your talents and, the treasure of being able to create unique items. So what would you say in your life are some things that you wish you had done better on the road to where you're currently at?
I guess started earlier. There have been plenty of times in my life where I've sat at my job or stood at my job. It's like right now it's manual labor. But like I used to do security and worked in a warehouse, did logistics. Even sometimes in college, just sitting in class, I would just think to myself, I was like, I don't want to be here right now. It's like, I really don't. I'd rather do something else. I'd rather find a way to make myself happy and be able to provide for myself. It's like, I don't want to have to sit and have someone yell at me or be a manager. I want to do something. And I always kind of knew it would be carpentry. But to start earlier and just not necessarily go all in, But if I could have, I guess, believed in myself earlier, that would have been a huge step forward.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from many people. And I hear this, from people as well in regards to their family can be their biggest supporter, but they can also be their biggest critic, because a family unit can get comfortable in the patterns they live of life of, just day in, day out, go to work, go home, get paid, live for the weekends and do this and do that. And then all of a sudden I guess might not be the best analogy, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and all of a sudden you're squeaking, and they're trying to be the grease to silence you. When really, in reality, if we were society, and I'm not saying anything about your parents or my parents, and the fact that they don't love us, but they don't necessarily have the training or the ability to push us to take those risks, because the generations of your parents and my parents grew up in, harsh times, and things where you didn't want to take any risk because you were afraid of losing what you currently had that was paying the bills or supporting the family. So it's hard for certain generations to support, their children, to push them to be the best version of them. So that critic thing seeps into us. Then we have self-doubt, that negative self-talk or limiting self-belief that some people are stuck with, many people actually. And so that really resonates with me, believing myself earlier. I fell into that trap, brother. I'm quite a bit older than you. I'm in my 50s, and I understand that belief in yourself earlier is so important. And it wasn't even the fact that my parents didn't support me. They didn't know that I was struggling. I didn't live with them. I didn't have that kind of connection. And I really didn't share with them because I was afraid of being rejected. And I think many people that are listening to this have felt that before. Like when Skylar said he wished he had started earlier and believed in himself. There's things I wish I would have done the same, that I would have started earlier, that I would have believed in myself. And I wish I would have had the ability just to speak out and say to my family, this is what I want. This is what I'm looking at doing. What do you think? Or even to friends. But again, I didn't want to be criticized. I cared too much. That's the problem. And I think that's probably you too. We care too much about those that are around us in our family, in our tribe of friends and stuff, what they believe. And in reality, we should be able to just talk about anything, but it doesn't necessarily happen that way. So I understand what you're saying. Belief in yourself earlier. You're still a relatively young dude. You're 29, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you got, I can't imagine if you had started earlier where you would be, but you still have a lot of road left on your journey, brother. And I'm so excited to be on that journey with you, to support you, to be a fan, to be that cheerleader with the whatever they call it, like the pom poms going like, "Go Skylar, go Skylar!" All right, and maybe be a little bit of a support network, or a lot of a support network as much as I can, to help you continue to level up and believe in yourself. So, Skylar, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm just gonna preface that right now because I feel like people don't appreciate good questions. But in terms of giving a heck and never giving up, is if you don't give a heck and if you just kind of laissez-faire through everything, your life won't be memorable. If you want to live a memorable life and do something that you're proud of, you have to give a heck. You have to take those risks, and you have to, reach out. You have to do whatever you can to make sure everything, every day is important. Not just to you, but to someone else.
Creating connections. right? Yeah, that is great ending message. We need to every day strive to be the best version of ourselves and have those connections. There's too many of us that live in the shadows, and then there's other people around us living in the shadows that are just people are hungry for human connection. Whether it's just when my kids were growing up, I used to tell them, you know what, that person in that store, the person at school, whoever the case may be, is just thirsty for acknowledgement. And maybe one of their love languages is words of affirmation. And, if you can be genuine and you see something you like about that person, or that they're wearing, or that they said, or whatever, be genuine and say, you know what, that's a really nice shirt you're wearing. Those are really nice earrings. That's a gorgeous watch. Or I really like what you had to say earlier. I was listening to you and I just wanted to say how much I appreciated you. That one little small thing can make a difference in that person's day, week, month. I've had people tell me, you said this to me one time and I was struggling that day and it made my day. And, and every time I see you now, I think about you. Like I think about, what you said. And that should be everybody's goal in life, is to connect with others and to leave them better than you found them. So that they, that you're always helping others lift up their own, out of their own despair and sadness. So I really like that closing message. I appreciate that. So while our time is almost up and I want to respect our listeners and your time, however, before we end, can you please tell the listeners, what is the best way to reach you, Skylar?
The best way is to, reach out to me on my Facebook page. My name's Skylar Sullivan. You can send me a message on Etsy, but, those have a tendency to either get lost in email or, just kind of discarded. Etsy's kind of weird lately. Okay. So if you send me a message on Facebook, that's the easiest way. I can get back to pretty much anyone within 24 hours.
Okay. I'll make sure that we'll touch base before I send this in and they create the show notes. We'll make sure that we put what you were just saying in there, and anything else you might want, we can even put in the Etsy link as well, so that they can go check out your little store. I don't know how, I'm not sure how Etsy is created and stuff. I've been on it over the years, but yeah, so we'll make sure that happens. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Skylar. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn. It is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.